Here it is, the grand experiment. I think that you will find that the lessons learned will be worth it. By the time I finish, if you haven't written something down from what I've said that hits you right between the eyes, then I've not done a very good job. All of my previous videos have actually been leading to this. Here goes. Before I became a chiropractor, I was enrolled at the University of Northern Iowa as a pre-chiropractic student. I knew that I wanted to become a chiropractor because I had migraine headaches in high school. I, of course, first tried the medical approach, getting shots of Demerol in my butt whenever I got a migraine. But even at that young age, it became apparent to me after several sessions that the shots were being used to control my pain and not getting to the cause of my migraines. A person I knew suggested that I go see a chiropractor because they might be able to help. In desperation, I went to see Dr. Lance V. in Waterloo, Iowa, who determined I had a neck problem that may be causing it. I received my first chiropractic adjustment that day and haven't had a single migraine since, and that was over 50 years ago. So don't tell me that chiropractic doesn't work, because that wouldn't be accurate. Is that migraines have a wide variety of causes, and one of the many ways to help is definitely chiropractic. That event, in addition to having a brother who was a chiropractor, is what started me on that path. So I enrolled at the University of Northern Iowa to obtain my prerequisites. The reason I chose Northern Iowa was because I could stay at home and save money on room and board, because it was nearby, because I wanted to pay for my own tuition. My father was the head of the biology department at that time, and we would often commute together. Looking back, those times spent in the car with him were cherished memories to me. Times spent with him that I otherwise would not have had. He had 2 PhDs, one in biology and one in zoology. He was a walking encyclopedia of all things biological. He was just Dad. Because he had an inside track, if you will, with the many professors and beneficial courses out there, he had ideas for some of the classes I should take. One recommendation he had was for a professor who had just recently published a book on astronomy. Reader something was his name. He was so fascinating to listen to that students that were not in his course would come to his lectures, standing room only. The second recommendation he gave was for me to take the human physiology course offered by Dr. Harold Riggs. I can use his name now because he is no longer with us. He too was a fascinating person to listen to, and was one of my first experiences with outside-the-box thinkers, a truly brilliant man. He also had a big entourage of students following him everywhere, and I swore I would never be one of them, because I could see he was very busy, and I, for one, respected his time. Well, one day in his lab, it was announced that we students taking his course would be performing a surgery on a laboratory rat, having to successfully remove a kidney, and that half our grade in this course was going to be based on whether the rat survived. My first thought was that I had heard the professor wrong. The thought of a bunch of misfits such as ourselves performing a surgery at all was more than a little intimidating. Then my real nightmare began, because we were instructed to elect a person among our lab group of 4 to oversee the procedure. Since I was the only pre-health professional in this group, I was elected to the position. In other words, I was outvoted by the others in our group. When the realization struck that I was actually the one in charge, I panicked. In desperation, I turned to Fred, Dr. Riggs' lab assistant, and asked, "What should I do?" I remember that as if it was yesterday, because he just reared his head back laughing and said, "You'll figure it out." You know the saying that once you commit to something, that help often comes in unexpected ways and unexpected places if you're ready for it? Well, that happened to me after the shock wore off. The only thing I could think of to do was to head to the university library to get a book on rat anatomy. We didn't have the luxury of the internet at the time or YouTube videos. We were going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. So I headed to the library, and I can still picture the face of the cute student librarian who was helping me. When I said that I needed to find a book on rat anatomy, she got this funny look on her face and she said, "Are you doing that lab rat experiment?" I said, "Yes." To that she said, "Gross." There went my chance to ask her out. So she went off to find the book I'd asked for, and when she returned she said, "Here are some other books that people were asking for as well that you might find helpful." One was on anesthesia for veterinarians, as I recall, and one was along the lines of surgical prep procedures, which included a chapter on suturing for dummies, which was certainly me. It turned out to be fortunate that they only let you check out the books for 2 hours at a time, or they probably would would have all been gone before I ever got there, and frankly, would never even thought to ask about some of them. I anxiously dove into all the books right away and assigned procedures to each of my lab partners. When the day came for the surgery, I remember not sleeping well the night before, worried that I might have forgotten something. In the interest of time, I'll cut to the chase. We pulled it off. Our lab rat survived. I don't know how, but he did. And I even received a compliment from Professor Riggs for the final suturing up of our rat. I didn't have the heart to tell him that I'd been practicing on oranges prior to the procedure. After it became apparent our rat was going to live, I just couldn't take it anymore. I was going to violate my rule for bothering the professor. I will never forget knocking on the door to his office one afternoon and having him answer the door by himself alone, thinking he was going to be busy. "Excuse me, Professor Riggs," I worked up the courage to ask. "Can you tell me why you had us do that experiment on the rat? Do you have any idea how many nights' sleep I lost over it?" I'll never forget the look in his eyes when he answered me. He looked up to the sky first and then paused and said, "I've been waiting a long time for someone to ask me that. And it's so funny, because I never thought it would be you." I don't know to this day what made him say that. Perhaps it was because I wasn't one of his followers. Looking back, every experiment performed in his lab was designed to teach us something. Again, a very brilliant but also different man. He went on to say this: "There is a religion in this country bigger and more powerful than any religion you can name, and it goes by the name of," and he uses hands in quotation marks, "modern medicine." When he said that, I began to laugh, thinking he was kidding, but he wasn't smiling. So becoming embarrassed, I quickly stopped laughing. He continued, "The reason I had you do the experiment was to prove to you that there is no magic or religion in medicine, like many people think, that it turns out to be a profession just like any other. If I had just told you that, you absolutely would never have believed me, because we've made it in our minds such a strong religion that there are no other possibilities out there. So I made you prove it to yourselves, performing an actual surgery, even though you were all still wet behind the ears college students." Then his face really lit up and he said, "I even took it one step further than they do, because instead of being spoon-fed by teaching them like they are in medical school, I had you teach yourselves how to do it." I sure never saw that answer coming. That very day, he planted a seed in me that grew into a great big oak tree years later. Beginning to sound familiar? As the years went by, I slowly began to see the wisdom of his words. Professor Riggs had absolutely nailed it. Now, having said that, am I implying that we should now be doing our own surgeries? No way. Please don't. My point is, we have let those very beliefs about our health turn into concrete truths without seeing a bigger picture, which in turn continues to govern our lives to this very day. Time to go. We'll pick up with the rest of the story next month. I hope you're enjoying this.